The Grand Hall was huge. Kate Morrison stood next to Commander Ryan Blake and looked around. She had never seen anything like this place. The ceiling was so high that she could barely see the top. Giant windows showed the stars outside. Aliens of all shapes and sizes filled the room. Kate was not impressed by the size of the room. She was busy studying everything. Her eyes moved from one alien to another. She noticed their weapons, their body language, their positions in the room. This was what she did best. She observed. She learned. She prepared. Ryan Blake was nervous. Kate could tell. He was trying to hide it, but she had worked with him for years. She knew his habits. The way he adjusted his collar. The way he cleared his throat. He was about to speak to the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and he wanted everything to go perfectly. Kate did not blame him for being nervous. Humans were new here. Only 50 years ago, humans had invented faster-than-light travel. Before that, they thought they were alone in the universe. Then they discovered the truth. The galaxy was full of life. Thousands of species, millions of worlds. And most of them did not think humans were special. In the center of the hall, on a massive throne of black stone, sat King Varthox. He was a Kelzari, one of the most feared species in the galaxy. The Kelzari were huge. They had thick scales, sharp claws, and 4 eyes that glowed red in the dim light. They came from a world where gravity was 3 times stronger than Earth. This made them incredibly strong and fast. King Varthox watched the humans approach. His face showed amusement. To him, humans looked weak. They were small with soft skin and no natural weapons. They came from a world with weak gravity. How could such creatures ever be a threat? How could they deserve respect? The Kelzari Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had crushed every rebellion. They did not negotiate with weaker species. They gave orders, and those orders were obeyed or there were consequences. Ryan Blake stopped at the proper distance from the throne. He bowed slightly, showing respect but not submission. Then he began to speak. His voice was clear and steady. He explained that humanity wished to join the Galactic Council as full members. He offered trade agreements, scientific cooperation, and cultural exchange. He spoke of mutual benefit and shared prosperity. Kate listened with half her attention. The other half was watching the guards. They stood along the walls, 12 of them, all Kelzari warriors. They wore armor and carried plasma weapons. They looked confident, almost bored. They did not see the humans as a threat. When Ryan finished speaking, King Varthox stood up. The movement was sudden and powerful. He was 3 meters tall, towering over everyone in the room. His scales gleamed under the lights. His claws clicked against the stone floor as he walked down from his throne. The king spoke in his own language. The translation device in Kate's ear converted his words to English. His voice was deep and harsh. He said that humanity's request was denied. Humans would not join as equals. Instead, they would serve the Empire as vassals. They would pay tribute, follow Kelzari law, and provide resources when demanded. This was not negotiable. Humanity had one day to accept these terms. Kate saw Ryan's jaw tighten. This was not what they had hoped for. Earth had sent them here to negotiate, not to surrender. But refusing the king would be dangerous. Very dangerous. Before Ryan could respond, Kate stepped forward. She moved smoothly, without hurry. Her face showed no emotion. She looked directly at King Varthox and spoke in a calm, polite voice. She said that humanity appreciated the king's offer, but they must respectfully decline. Humans did not wish to be vassals. They wished to be partners. They believed that cooperation between equals would benefit everyone more than domination and submission. The room became very quiet. Several aliens made sounds of shock. No one spoke to King Varthox this way. No one refused him. It simply was not done. The king's eyes focused on Kate. All 4 of them stared at her with intensity. He took a step closer. Then another. He moved until he was standing right in front of her, close enough that she could smell his breath. It smelled like metal and something burnt. King Varthox spoke again. His voice was quieter now, but more dangerous. He asked Kate if she understood what she had just done. Did she know that refusing him meant war? Did she understand that her entire species could be destroyed for her insolence? Kate did not move. She did not step back. She did not look away. She simply replied that she understood perfectly. Humanity would not be threatened. They would not bow. They would fight if necessary, but they preferred peace between equals. The king made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was not a happy sound. He told Kate that in Kelzari culture, speaking to a king the way she had was punishable by death. Immediate death. And since she was female, which Kelzari considered inferior, her crime was even worse. Kate's expression did not change. She said that human culture was different. In her culture, attempting to murder a diplomatic envoy was considered very rude. But she was willing to forgive this cultural misunderstanding if the king was willing to discuss terms reasonably. That was when King Varthox decided to teach the humans a lesson. He would kill this female right here, right now, in front of everyone. He would show the galaxy what happened to those who defied him. It would be quick. It would be brutal. And it would be remembered. His hand shot forward with incredible speed. His claws were aimed at Kate's throat. He intended to crush her windpipe and let her die gasping on the floor. It would take only a second. Humans were weak, fragile, easy to break. But his claws closed on empty air. Kate was no longer standing where she had been. She had moved so fast that most of the observers did not see it happen. One moment she was in front of the king. The next moment she was beside him, and his arm was extended uselessly into empty space. Before Varthox could react, Kate grabbed his wrist. Her grip was precise, her fingers pressing on specific points. She twisted his arm in a way that should have been impossible. The king, despite his size and strength, felt pain shoot through his limb. His body responded instinctively, trying to move away from the pain. But Kate was already moving again. She used his own momentum against him. As he tried to pull away, she pulled harder in the same direction. This threw him off balance. His huge body stumbled forward. Kate moved with him, staying close, staying in control. Her knee came up and struck his chest right where his nerve cluster was located. Kate had studied Kelzari anatomy for weeks before this meeting. She knew exactly where to hit. The impact was not strong enough to injure him seriously, but it was strong enough to disrupt his nervous system. King Varthox's legs stopped working properly. He started to fall. As he went down, Kate released his wrist and struck him again, this time at the base of his skull. Another nerve cluster. Another perfectly placed hit. The king collapsed to the floor. His body was temporarily paralyzed. He could not move his limbs. He could barely breathe. His four eyes were wide with shock and confusion. What had just happened? How had this small, weak human done this to him? Kate stood over him. She was not even breathing hard. Her face still showed no emotion. She looked down at the king and spoke in that same calm, polite voice. She said that she hoped they could now discuss terms in a more civilized manner. She also mentioned that the paralysis would wear off in about 5 minutes. She had been very careful not to cause any permanent damage. After all, she was a diplomat, not an assassin. The entire sequence had taken less than 4 seconds. The guards finally reacted. They rushed forward, weapons raised. They surrounded Kate and Ryan, shouting orders in Kelzari, but they seemed uncertain. Their king was on the floor, defeated by a single unarmed human. How was this possible? What should they do? Ryan Blake raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. He spoke loudly, clearly. He told the guards to stop. No one needed to die today. This was a misunderstanding that could be resolved peacefully. But the guards were angry and frightened. Their king had been humiliated. Their pride demanded revenge. 3 of them ignored Ryan's words and attacked Kate simultaneously, coming at her from different angles. Kate moved through them like water flowing around rocks. She did not fight with emotion or anger. She simply moved, struck, and moved again. Each movement was efficient. Each strike was precise. She did not waste energy. She did not show off. She just did what was necessary. In less than 30 seconds, all 3 guards were on the ground, groaning in pain but alive. Kate had broken no bones. She had caused no permanent injuries. But she had made her point very clear. The remaining guards stopped advancing. They looked at their fallen comrades. They looked at Kate, who stood calmly in the center of the hall, barely touched. They looked at their king, still paralyzed on the floor, and they understood that attacking this human would end badly for them. Ryan Blake spoke into the silence. He said that perhaps it was time for everyone to take a moment and reconsider their positions. He suggested that threats and violence were not the best way to begin a diplomatic relationship. He said that humanity came in peace, but they would not be victims, Not now, not ever. The grand hall remained frozen in shocked silence. Aliens from dozens of species stared at the scene before them. Their most powerful king lay on the floor, unable to move. His elite guards were groaning in pain. And a single human woman stood unharmed in the center of it all. Kate Morrison waited patiently. She knew that what happened in the next few minutes would determine the future of humanity in the galaxy. If the other aliens saw her actions as an unprovoked attack, humanity would be seen as aggressive and dangerous. But if they understood that she had only defended herself, then perhaps there was still a chance for peace. Ryan Blake decided it was time to explain. He raised his voice so everyone in the hall could hear. He spoke clearly and calmly. He told the assembled aliens that perhaps some introductions were in order. He gestured to Kate and said her full name and title. He explained that Kate was not just a diplomat. She was a captain in Earth's Special Operations Division. Before becoming a diplomat, she had served in Earth's military for 15 years. She had been part of an elite unit that specialized in difficult missions behind enemy lines. Ryan paused, then continued. He said that during Earth's last major war, Kate had earned a special name. Her fellow soldiers called her the Baba Yaga. In Earth's old stories, Baba Yaga was a powerful witch who could not be killed. She lived in a house that walked on chicken legs. She tested travelers and punished the wicked. She was feared and respected in equal measure. The aliens did not understand the reference, but Ryan explained further. He said that Kate had been given this name because of her success rate. She had completed 47 missions over 3 years. Every mission was successful. Every target was eliminated. She had never failed. She had never been captured. And she had never lost a teammate. Ryan looked around the room, making eye contact with various ambassadors. He told them that Kate was one of approximately 300 humans with this level of training. 300. And she was not even the best. She was simply good at her job. The implications of this statement rippled through the chamber. If there were 300 humans like Kate, and if she was not the best, then what were the best ones capable of? What other surprises did humanity hide? An ambassador from the Chitauri species spoke up. The Chitauri were insect-like creatures with multiple limbs and compound eyes. This particular Chitauri was named Vexir. He asked a question that everyone wanted answered. How is it possible for a human to defeat a Kelzari warrior? Humans were smaller, weaker, and came from a low-gravity world. It made no sense. Kate answered the question herself. Her voice was calm and educational, like a teacher explaining a simple concept. She said that humans had learned long ago that size and strength were not the most important factors in combat. What mattered more was knowledge, technique, and preparation. She explained that before coming to this meeting, she had studied Kelzari anatomy for weeks. She knew where their nerve clusters were located. She knew where their bones connected. She knew which pressure points would cause pain and which would cause temporary paralysis. She had prepared for this possibility. Kate continued. She said that humans were not the strongest species on their own planet. There were creatures on Earth that could kill a human easily. Bears, tigers, crocodiles, elephants. All of them were stronger than humans. But humans had become the dominant species anyway. How? By using their brains, by working together, by making tools, by learning and adapting. She said that humans were persistence hunters. When ancient humans hunted large animals, they did not try to overpower them. Instead, they chased them for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Humans could not run fast, but they could run forever. They did not give up. They did not stop. They were patient and relentless. This same principle applied to combat. Kate did not try to match the Kelzari in strength. Instead, she used her knowledge of their biology against them. She moved faster than they expected because she anticipated their attacks. She struck at vulnerable points because she knew exactly where those points were. She won because she was prepared. By now, King Varthox was beginning to recover. Feeling was returning to his limbs. He pushed himself up slowly, breathing hard. His pride was badly wounded. He had been defeated in front of the entire Galactic Council. His reputation as the most feared warrior in the galaxy was damaged, possibly beyond repair. The king pulled himself back onto his throne. He sat heavily, his 4 eyes fixed on Kate with a mixture of anger and something that might have been grudging respect. He spoke, and his voice was rough with emotion. He said that Kate had proven herself to be a formidable warrior, But one skilled fighter did not represent an entire species. The Kelzari Empire had millions of soldiers, thousands of warships. Surely humanity could not match such power. Ryan Blake responded to this. He said that the king was correct. Humanity did not have millions of soldiers or thousands of warships, not yet. They were new to space travel and had focused their resources on exploration and science rather than military expansion. But, Ryan continued, humanity had something else. They had 3 billion years of evolution on a planet that constantly tried to kill them. Earth was a death world by galactic standards. It had deadly weather, dangerous animals, and diseases that could wipe out entire populations. Humans survived all of this and thrived. Ryan explained that Earth had extreme temperature variations. Some places were frozen wastelands where nothing should survive. Other places were burning deserts with no water. There were jungles full of poisonous plants and predators. There were oceans with creatures that could swallow a human whole. And yet humans lived in all of these environments. They adapted. They survived. Kate added more details. She said that humans had fought each other for thousands of years. They had developed countless ways to kill. Swords, spears, arrows, guns, bombs, chemical weapons, biological weapons. They had studied war like other species studied art. They knew strategy, tactics, psychology, logistics. War was part of human history, woven into their culture and their thinking. She said that when humans finally achieved peace on their own world, they did not forget how to fight. They simply redirected their knowledge. The same skills used for war could be used for other purposes. The same technology that powered weapons could power spacecraft. The same strategic thinking that won battles could solve complex problems. Kate looked directly at King Varthox. She said that humanity did not want war with the Kelzari Empire. War was wasteful. It destroyed resources and killed people who could be working together instead. Humanity preferred cooperation. But if forced to fight, humanity would not lose. They would use every advantage, every trick, every piece of knowledge they possessed. And they would not stop until victory was achieved. The king was silent for a long moment. He was thinking. He had built his empire on the belief that physical strength determined superiority, but Kate had proven that belief wrong. She was smaller and weaker than him in terms of raw physical power, yet she had defeated him easily. What did that mean for everything he believed? Around the hall, other aliens were having similar thoughts. Many species had submitted to Kelzari rule because they believed resistance was impossible. The Kelzari were simply too strong, too powerful. But now they had seen that strength was not everything. If humans could defeat Kelzari warriors, maybe they could too. Maybe rebellion was possible. Maybe freedom was possible. Vexazir, the Chitri ambassador, was especially excited by this possibility. His species had suffered under Kelzari rule for centuries. They were forced to mine resources on their homeworlds and send them to the Empire. They had no voice in the council. They were treated as servants, not equals. But if the Kelzari could be defeated, then perhaps things could change. Ryan Blake sensed the shifting mood in the room. This was a critical moment. He needed to shape the narrative carefully. He did not want to start a galactic war or inspire violent rebellions. He wanted to create a new system based on cooperation and mutual respect. Ryan addressed the entire council. He said that humanity did not come to destroy the existing order. They came to improve it. They proposed a new structure where all species had equal voices, regardless of their military strength. Decisions would be made based on logic and mutual benefit, not threats and intimidation. He said that strong species like the Kelzari would still be respected and valued. Their strength could be used to protect weaker species rather than dominate them. In return, weaker species could contribute their knowledge, resources, and skills. Everyone would benefit. No one would be enslaved. King Varthox listened to this proposal. Part of him wanted to reject it immediately. His pride demanded that he punish the humans for their insolence. But another part of him, the part that had survived countless battles and political intrigues, recognized that the situation had changed. The old ways might not work anymore. The king spoke again. He said that he would consider humanity's proposal, but he would not make any promises. He needed time to think, to consult with his advisors to understand what this new reality meant for his empire. Ryan accepted this. He said that humanity was willing to wait for a reasonable period, but he also made it clear that they would not wait forever. Humanity wanted peace, but they would not accept vassalage or slavery. The human delegation was given quarters in the diplomatic section of the council station. The rooms were comfortable but clearly designed for observation. Kate swept them for listening devices and found 7. She left them in place. If the council wanted to listen, let them listen. Humanity had nothing to hide. Ryan Blake sat down heavily in a chair. The tension of the past few hours was finally catching up with him. He looked at Kate, who was checking the windows and exits with her usual thoroughness. He asked her if she had really planned for that confrontation. Kate nodded. She said that she had studied King Varthox's psychological profile before they left Earth. Everything she read suggested that he was aggressive, proud, and quick to violence when challenged. The probability that he would attack was over 70%. She had prepared accordingly. Ryan asked what would have happened if she had been wrong. What if the king had accepted their proposal peacefully? Kate smiled slightly. She said that would have been better. Her plan was always to avoid violence if possible, but she believed in preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. Before Ryan could respond, there was a knock at the door. Kate moved to the side, out of direct line of sight. Her hand moved to the small weapon hidden in her belt. Ryan called out, asking who was there. A voice answered in accented English. It was Vexazir, the Chitauri ambassador. He said that he came alone and wished to speak with the human delegation. It was important. Kate nodded to Ryan, indicating it was safe. Ryan opened the door. Vexazir entered carefully, his multiple legs clicking on the floor. His compound eyes looked around the room, taking in every detail. He seemed nervous. Ryan offered the ambassador a seat, but Vexazir preferred to stand. His species was more comfortable that way. He got straight to the point. He said that the Chitauri people had been watching humanity with great interest. What happened in the council hall had changed everything. Vexazir explained that the Chitauri had been under Kelzari domination for over 300 years. His people were miners and engineers, skilled at extracting resources from difficult environments. The Kelzari had conquered the Chitauri homeworlds and forced them to work, sending most of their resources to the Empire while barely keeping enough to survive. The Chitauri had tried to rebel several times. Each rebellion was crushed brutally. The Kelzari were simply too strong. The Chitauri were not warriors. They were builders and thinkers. They could not match Kelzari's strength in direct combat. But now, Vexazir said, everything was different. Humanity had shown that the Kelzari could be defeated. Not with greater strength, but with superior technique and knowledge. This gave the Chitauri hope. Perhaps they too could resist. Perhaps freedom was possible after all. Vexazir asked if humanity would be willing to form an alliance with the Chitauri. His people had much to offer. Advanced mining technology, expertise in building underground facilities, knowledge of rare materials. In return, they asked for training in defensive combat and strategic planning. They did not want to conquer anyone. They simply wanted to be free. Kate and Ryan exchanged glances. This was an opportunity, but also a risk. If they allied with the Chitauri, they would essentially be taking sides against the Kelzari Empire. That could lead to war, but refusing would mean abandoning a potential ally and allowing the Kelzari to continue their oppression. Ryan spoke carefully. He said that humanity was interested in forming alliances based on mutual respect and benefit. However, they needed to understand the situation better before making any commitments. He asked Vexazir to tell them more about the Chitauri and their relationship with other species in the galaxy. Vexazir was happy to provide information. He explained that the Chitauri were not the only species suffering under Kelzari rule. There were dozens of others. The Nereids, an aquatic species, had their ocean worlds exploited for rare minerals. The crystallids, beings made of living silicon, were forced to grow crystals for Kelzari technology. The Scree, bird-like creatures, had their flying cities destroyed when they refused to pay tribute. All of these species resented the Kelzari, but none had the strength to resist. The Empire was too large, too powerful. But if these species worked together, pooled their resources and knowledge, then perhaps they could change things. And with humanity's help, with access to human strategic thinking and combat training, the odds would improve dramatically. Kate asked Vexazir about the loyalty of these species. Would they stand together if war came, or would they scatter at the first sign of Kelzari retaliation? These were important questions. An alliance was only as strong as its weakest member. Vexazir admitted that this was a concern. Some species were more willing to fight than others. Some had been beaten down so badly that they had lost hope. But he believed that if they saw real progress, if they saw that resistance was possible, their courage would return. Ryan said that humanity would consider the proposal. But he made something clear. Humanity would not fight the Chitauri's battles for them. If an alliance was formed, it would be based on each species contributing according to their abilities. The Chitauri would need to be willing to defend themselves with human assistance and training, not human soldiers doing the work for them. Vexazir understood and agreed. He said that the Chitauri did not want to be rescued. They wanted to be empowered. They wanted to learn how to protect themselves so that they would never be enslaved again. After Vexazir left, Kate and Ryan discussed the situation late into the night. They both knew that forming alliances with oppressed species was risky. It would put humanity in direct opposition to the Kelzari Empire. War might become inevitable, but Kate pointed out something important. War was probably inevitable anyway. King Varthox had been humiliated in front of the entire council. His pride would demand revenge. He would not simply accept the new situation. He would try to restore his reputation by crushing humanity and proving that their success was a fluke. Ryan agreed with this assessment. So the question was not whether war would come, but how to prepare for it. Should they wait for the Kelzari to attack, or should they build alliances now and prepare defenses? Should they be reactive or proactive? Kate said that in her experience, waiting for an enemy to attack on their terms was always a mistake. Better to prepare, to choose the battlefield, to set traps. She recommended that they begin forming alliances immediately and start developing defensive strategies. They should assume that the Kelzari would attack Earth within weeks, maybe days. Ryan decided to contact Earth and request authorization to form alliances. He sent an encrypted message explaining the situation and recommending a course of action. The response came back within hours. Earth's government agreed. Humanity would begin building a coalition of species willing to stand against Kelzari tyranny. Over the next several days, Ryan and Kate met with ambassadors from various species. Some were interested in an alliance, others were too afraid to commit. But slowly a coalition began to form. The Chitauri, the Nereids, the Crystallids, and several smaller species agreed to work together. Each species brought something valuable to the alliance. The Chitauri had engineering skills and could build fortifications quickly. The Nereids had access to resources in ocean environments that other species could not reach. The Crystallids had advanced sensor technology that could detect ships at great distances. Together they were stronger than they were alone. Humanity's contribution was knowledge. Kate began teaching selected individuals from each species about human combat techniques, strategic planning, and psychological warfare. She showed them how to analyze an enemy's weaknesses, how to set traps, how to fight smart rather than fighting hard. Meanwhile, King Varthox was making his own preparations. He had retreated to his flagship, a massive warship called the Dominion. There he met with his military commanders and began planning humanity's destruction. The commanders assured him that one skilled fighter meant nothing against the might of the Kelzari fleet. They had thousands of warships, millions of soldiers. They could glass entire planets with their weapons. Surely these weak humans stood no chance. But Varthox was not so certain. He had felt Kate's skill firsthand. She had moved with a precision and efficiency that suggested extensive training and planning. If humans could prepare that thoroughly for a simple diplomatic meeting, how well would they prepare for actual war? Still, the king decided to proceed. His pride would not allow him to back down. He ordered 5 battle groups to prepare for an assault on Earth. Over 300 warships would travel to the human home system, destroy their defenses, and subjugate their population. It would be a show of overwhelming force that would restore Kelzari prestige and put humanity in their proper place. The fleet would launch in 2 weeks. That would give them time to gather supplies, brief the crews, and coordinate their attack. The king personally selected Admiral Korvax to lead the assault. Korvax was an experienced commander who had led successful campaigns against dozens of worlds. He was brutal, efficient, and loyal. Kate received intelligence about the Kelzari preparations from several sources. Some information came from Chitauri workers who maintained Kelzari ships. Other information came from surveillance systems that humanity had deployed quietly throughout the council station. By analyzing all these sources, Kate returned to Earth 3 days before the predicted Kelzari attack. She went directly to the military command center hidden beneath the surface of the moon. This facility had been built specifically for situations like this, where Earth needed to coordinate its defenses without the enemy being able to strike at the command structure. The command center was busy with activity. Military personnel moved between stations, checking systems and updating tactical displays. Admiral Helen Carter was in charge of Earth's space defense. She was a veteran of the Pan-Pacific War, the same conflict where Kate had earned her reputation. The two women knew each other well and had worked together many times. Helen greeted Kate with a firm handshake and a worried expression. She had read Kate's reports about the coming attack. 300 Kelzari warships was a massive force. Earth's defenses included only a few dozen orbital platforms and about 50 patrol ships. On paper, it looked like Earth had no chance of survival. But Kate had a plan. She spread out a holographic map of the solar system and began explaining. She told Helen that the key to victory was not matching the Kelzari in firepower. That was impossible. Instead, they needed to take away the Kelzari advantages and exploit their weaknesses. Kate explained that the Kelzari relied on 3 main advantages. First, they had overwhelming numbers. Second, they had powerful weapons that could destroy most ships in a single hit. Third, they had strong shields that protected them from return fire. These advantages had allowed them to dominate the galaxy for thousands of years. But every advantage had a corresponding weakness. Large numbers meant complex coordination. If that coordination was disrupted, the fleet would become confused and inefficient. Powerful weapons meant large power requirements. If those power systems were disabled, the weapons became useless. Strong shields had specific frequencies and harmonics. If those frequencies were understood, the shields could be bypassed. Kate had spent weeks studying Kelzari technology. She had analyzed battle recordings, intercepted communications, and questioned Chitauri engineers who had worked on Kelzari ships. She knew exactly how their systems worked and where the vulnerabilities were. The first part of her plan involved mines. Not ordinary mines, but quantum state devices that were invisible to standard sensors. These mines had been developed by human scientists working with crystallid technology. They would be scattered throughout the solar system, waiting for the Kelzari to arrive. When activated, the mines would not explode. Instead, they would create fields of quantum uncertainty in the space around enemy ships. This would cause navigation systems to fail, sensors to report false data, and targeting computers to malfunction. The Kelzari fleet would be thrown into chaos without a single shot being fired. The second part of the plan involved stealth ships. Humanity had developed advanced cloaking technology that bent light and other radiation around a ship, making it nearly invisible. These stealth ships would hide among the asteroids and debris of the solar system, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The stealth ships carried special weapons designed to exploit Kelzari shield frequencies. Kate had discovered that Kelzari shields operated on a narrow band of frequencies for maximum efficiency. By firing energy weapons tuned to exactly the right frequency, human ships could bypass the shields entirely and hit the hull directly. The third part of the plan was psychological warfare. Kate had recorded a message that would be broadcast continuously on Kelzari military frequencies during the battle. The message would remind the Kelzari soldiers that they were fighting for their king's pride, not for any legitimate reason. It would offer them the chance to surrender with honor rather than die for nothing. Helen listened to the entire plan carefully. When Kate finished, Helen asked the critical question: would it work? Kate admitted that there were no guarantees. War was unpredictable, but she believed the plan had a high probability of success, perhaps 70 to 80%. Those were acceptable odds. 2 weeks after Kate's confrontation with King Varthox, the Kelzari fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. 5 battle groups, over 300 warships, emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Admiral Korvax commanded from his flagship, the Dominion, the same ship where King Varthox had planned this attack. Korvax looked at the tactical display and felt satisfied. His sensors showed minimal human defenses, a few orbital stations, a handful of patrol boats. Nothing that could possibly stop his fleet. The humans had been foolish to challenge the Kelzari Empire. Now they would pay the price for their arrogance. He ordered the fleet to advance in standard attack formation. The dreadnoughts moved forward in the center, protected by layers of smaller ships. This was the same formation that had conquered hundreds of worlds. It had never failed. As the Kelzari fleet moved deeper into the solar system, Kate watched from the command center on Luna. She tracked their progress carefully, waiting for the perfect moment. The fleet was maintaining tight formation, just as she had predicted. They were following their doctrine exactly. This made them predictable. When the fleet reached the optimal position, Kate gave the order: activate the mines. Throughout the solar system, thousands of quantum mines activated simultaneously. Invisible fields of uncertainty spread through space, enveloping the Kelzari ships. Within seconds, chaos erupted across the fleet. Navigation systems reported conflicting data. Some ships thought they were moving forward when they were actually drifting sideways. Sensor displays showed phantom contacts that did not exist and failed to show real objects that did exist. Targeting computers calculated firing solutions based on false information. Admiral Korvax tried to maintain control, shouting orders to his communications officer. But the communication systems were also affected by the quantum interference. Messages were garbled, delayed, or lost entirely. The tight coordination that made the Kelzari fleet so effective fell apart. Some captains tried to regroup with nearby ships. Others attempted to retreat to a safe distance. A few even fired their weapons, though they had no clear targets. The perfect formation dissolved into confusion and disorder. That was when the stealth ships attacked. Human ships appeared throughout the Kelzari formation, seemingly materializing out of empty space. They were smaller than the Kelzari vessels, faster and more agile. They moved with precision, targeting specific systems on each enemy ship. The human weapons were not designed to destroy. They were designed to disable. Energy beams tuned to bypass Kelzari shields struck reactor cooling systems, communication arrays, shield generators, and weapon capacitors. Each shot was carefully aimed at a critical but non-lethal system. One by one, Kelzari ships lost power. Their weapons went offline. Their shields failed. Their engines sputtered and died. The ships remained intact, their crews unharmed, but they were helpless, floating in space like dead metal. Throughout all of this, Kate's recorded message played continuously on Kelzari frequencies. Her voice was calm and clear, speaking in perfect Kelzari standard. She explained that King Varthox had sent them here to restore his pride after being defeated by a human. She asked them if that was worth dying for. She offered them the chance to surrender and return home safely. The psychological impact was devastating. Kelzari soldiers had been told that humans were weak and primitive, but now they were being systematically defeated by an enemy they could barely see, using weapons they did not understand. The message made them question why they were even fighting. Within 4 hours of the battle beginning, over 200 Kelzari ships had surrendered. Their captains broadcast surrender codes on human frequencies and shut down their remaining systems. They had no shame in surrendering to an enemy who had proven to be so superior. The remaining ships, those whose commanders were too proud or too afraid of punishment to surrender, continued fighting. But they were isolated now, cut off from support and coordination. Human ships targeted them methodically, disabling them one at a time. Admiral Korvax was one of the last to surrender. His flagship was surrounded by human vessels, its systems failing one by one. He had no weapons, no shields, no engines. He could either surrender or wait for his life support to fail. He chose surrender. When the battle ended, not a single Kelzari ship remained operational. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. The entire Kelzari fleet had been defeated with minimal casualties on either side. It was not a battle. It was a demonstration of superior strategy and technology. Ryan Blake and Kate traveled to the Dominion to accept Admiral Korvax's formal surrender. The Kelzari admiral looked at them with a mixture of anger, shame, and confusion. He told Kate that what she had done was not natural. No species should be able to fight the way humans fought, Kate replied simply. She said that humans were the product of billions of years of evolution on a dangerous world. They survived by being smart, adaptable, and persistent. They did not need to be the strongest or the fastest. They just needed to be the most prepared, and they always were. News of the Kelzari defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species with access to communication networks heard the story. The mighty Kelzari Empire, which had ruled for 3,000 years, had sent 5 battle groups to crush a new species, and that new species had destroyed the entire fleet without losing a single ship. The reaction was different depending on who was listening. Species that were allied with the Kelzari felt shock and concern. If the Kelzari could be defeated, what did that mean for galactic security? Species that were oppressed by the Kelzari felt hope and excitement. If humanity could resist, perhaps they could too. Neutral species felt curiosity and caution. What kind of creatures were these humans? King Varthox received the news in his private chambers. He was alone when the report came through. He read it once, then again, unable to believe what he was seeing. His entire fleet defeated. 300 ships disabled or captured, not destroyed, which would have at least shown that they fought bravely. No, disabled, which showed they were completely outmatched. The king sat in silence for a long time. He thought about his empire, built on the principle that strength determines superiority. He thought about his reputation as the most feared warrior in the galaxy. He thought about Kate Morrison and how easily she had defeated him. And he realized that everything he believed was wrong. Strength alone was not enough. Knowledge mattered, strategy mattered, preparation mattered. The humans had proven this beyond any doubt. And now Varthox had a choice. He could continue fighting, sending more fleets to be defeated until his empire collapsed. Or he could adapt, learn, and find a new way to survive in a galaxy where humans existed. It was the hardest decision of his life. His pride screamed at him to fight, to never surrender, but his intelligence, the part of him that had allowed him to rule for so long, told him that fighting was foolish. The humans had offered peace between equals. Perhaps it was time to accept that offer. Ryan Blake and Kate Morrison returned to the Galactic Council Station 2 weeks after the battle. They came not as supplicants requesting membership, but as representatives of a power that had proven itself. The atmosphere in the Grand Hall was completely different from their first visit. Ambassadors who had ignored them before now sought to speak with them. Species that had dismissed humanity as weak now showed respect and even fear. The power dynamic had shifted completely. Humanity was no longer a minor species hoping for acceptance. They were a major player that could not be ignored. King Varthox was already in the hall when they arrived. He sat on his throne, but his posture was different. Less aggressive, less dominant. He watched the humans approach with eyes that showed intelligence and calculation rather than contempt. Ryan began speaking, laying out humanity's proposal for restructuring the Galactic Council. The new system would be based on cooperation rather than domination. Each species would have voting power proportional to their contribution to the collective good, not their military strength. Disputes would be resolved through negotiation and arbitration, not conquest. Most importantly, no species would ever be forced into vassalage again. All members of the council would be equals, regardless of their size, strength, or technology level. This was not negotiable. Humanity would accept nothing less. Many ambassadors spoke in support of this proposal. The Chitauri, the Nereids, the Crystallids, and dozens of other species that had suffered under Kelzari rule enthusiastically endorsed the changes. They saw this as their chance for freedom and equality. Some species opposed the changes. They were Kelzari allies who benefited from the old system. They argued that military strength should determine leadership. They claimed that the proposed changes would lead to chaos and weakness, but their arguments fell flat. The Kelzari defeat had proven that military strength was not the only form of power. Intelligence, strategy, and technology could overcome raw force. The old system was based on a false assumption. It was time for something new. The critical moment came when King Varthox stood to speak. The hall fell silent. Everyone waited to hear what he would say. Would he reject the proposal and promise continued war? Would he accept and lose face completely? What would the proud king choose? Varthox spoke slowly and carefully. He said that the Kelzari Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years through strength and conquest. This had brought stability, though at a cost. Many species had suffered under Kelzari rule. He acknowledged this. He said that humanity had shown that the old ways were no longer sufficient. A new type of power had emerged, one based on knowledge and preparation rather than physical dominance. The Kelzari could either adapt to this reality or be left behind by history. Therefore, Varthox continued, he would accept humanity's proposal. The Kelzari Empire would retain its territory and sovereignty, but it would no longer seek to dominate other species. It would participate in the new council structure as an equal member, and it would abide by the new rules regarding peaceful resolution of disputes. The hall erupted in surprised conversation. Many could not believe what they had just heard. The proud king had essentially admitted defeat and accepted a subordinate position, but others understood that Varthox was being smart. By accepting the changes now, he preserved what remained of his empire. By fighting further, he would have lost everything. Kate watched all of this with her usual calm expression. She had predicted that Varthox would choose pragmatism over pride. He was a survivor, like all successful rulers. He knew when to fight and when to negotiate. This was a time for negotiation. The council voted on the new structure. The result was overwhelmingly in favor. A few Kelzari allies voted against, but they were a small minority. The galaxy had chosen change over tradition, equality over domination, cooperation over conquest. In the days and weeks that followed, the new system began to take shape. Species that had been oppressed for centuries started rebuilding their worlds and their cultures. Trade networks expanded as barriers came down. Scientific cooperation increased as knowledge was shared more freely. The galaxy was changing, and most of the change was positive. Humanity became a central figure in this new order. Other species came to them for advice, training, and technology. Kate Morrison and others like her began teaching alien operatives human combat techniques and strategic thinking. Human engineers worked with Chitauri builders to create new defensive systems. Human scientists collaborated with crystallid researchers to develop advanced sensors. Kate herself became legendary. The Baba Yaga, the witch who could not be killed. Stories about her spread to every corner of the galaxy. Some of the stories were true. Many were exaggerated. All of them served a purpose. They reminded everyone that humanity was not to be underestimated. Ryan Blake was offered the position of Earth's permanent ambassador to the Council. He accepted. He would spend the next several years helping to implement the new system and resolving disputes between species. It was challenging work, but also rewarding. He was helping to build something better than what existed before. Kate eventually retired from active diplomatic service. She had done what she set out to do. Humanity was established as an equal power in the galaxy. No one would threaten Earth again without serious consequences. Her job was complete, but she did not fully retire. She continued training new operatives, teaching them the skills and mindset that had made her successful. She also advised the government on strategic planning and threat assessment. Her experience was too valuable to waste. One evening, Kate stood in an observation deck looking at Earth. The planet rotated slowly below, beautiful and peaceful. Ryan joined her, standing silently for a moment before speaking. He said that what they had accomplished was remarkable. They had changed the entire galaxy in just a few months. Kate replied that they had simply shown the galaxy what humanity was capable of. The change was inevitable once others understood that strength alone was not enough. Ryan asked if she thought the peace would last. Kate considered the question carefully. She said that nothing lasted forever. Eventually, someone would challenge the new order. Someone would test humanity again, but when that happened, humanity would be ready. They were always ready. She said that the legend of the Baba Yaga would continue. It would remind potential enemies that attacking humanity was a mistake. It would give hope to oppressed species that resistance was possible. It would maintain the balance of power that allowed peace to exist. Ryan smiled at that. He said that she had become exactly what Earth needed. A symbol of strength, intelligence, and determination. A reminder that humanity would not be victims, Kate shrugged. She said she was just a soldier who did her job. The legend was useful, but it was not real. She was human, with all the limitations that implied. But those limitations had never stopped her before, and they never would. That was what it meant to be human. To face challenges, overcome obstacles, and emerge victorious through intelligence and persistence. 5 years passed after the Kelzari defeat. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Galactic Council operated under its new structure, with decisions made through discussion and voting rather than threats and force. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now working together on joint projects. The Chitauri rebuilt their mining colonies, but this time they kept most of the resources for themselves. They used their newfound wealth to develop better technology and improve living conditions. Their population grew and their culture flourished. They were grateful to humanity for making this possible. The Nereids expanded their underwater cities and began trading rare minerals with other species. They were no longer forced to hand over their resources to the Kelzari. Their aquatic technology became highly valued throughout the galaxy. They developed methods for extracting resources from ocean worlds that no other species could match. The crystallids advanced their sensor technology and sold it to other species. Their crystal-based computers were faster and more efficient than anything else available. They became wealthy and influential, using their newfound power to help other oppressed species gain freedom. Even the Kelzari Empire changed. King Varthox proved to be a shrewd leader. He understood that the galaxy had moved on from the age of conquest. Instead of fighting this reality, he adapted to it. The Kelzari military became a peacekeeping force, protecting trade routes and responding to emergencies. This gave them purpose and maintained their warrior culture without requiring conquest. Varthox even became an unlikely ally of humanity. He recognized that Kate Morrison had been right about everything. Strength alone was not enough. Intelligence, preparation, and strategy mattered more. He began sending young Kelzari warriors to train with human instructors, learning tactics and techniques that complemented their natural physical advantages. The result was a new generation of Kelzari warriors who were not just strong, but also smart. They learned to analyze situations, plan ahead, and use their advantages efficiently. They became better soldiers and better leaders. The Kelzari military, once feared for its brutality, became respected for its professionalism. Kate Morrison was living on Earth, teaching at a military academy. She trained small groups of elite operatives, passing on the skills and knowledge she had accumulated over her career. Her students came from all branches of human military service and even from allied alien species. Everyone wanted to learn from the Baba Yaga. She taught them more than just combat techniques. She taught them how to think strategically, how to analyze enemies, how to prepare for every possibility. She emphasized that violence should always be the last resort, used only when all other options had failed. But when it was necessary, it should be executed with perfect precision and overwhelming effectiveness. Her philosophy was simple. Know your enemy better than they know themselves. Prepare for every scenario. Never fight fair if you can help it. Use every advantage. And most importantly, never underestimate anyone, no matter how weak they appear. These lessons had applications beyond military operations. Business leaders used them for competition in the marketplace. Diplomats used them for negotiations. Scientists used them for solving complex problems. Kate's teachings had become part of human culture, influencing how people approach challenges in all areas of life. One day, Kate received an unusual visitor at the academy. It was King Varthox himself. He had come to Earth on a diplomatic mission and requested a private meeting with her. Kate agreed, curious about what the king wanted. They met in a quiet garden on the academy grounds. Varthox looked older now. His scales had dulled slightly and he moved with less aggression, but his eyes still showed sharp intelligence. He sat across from Kate and for a moment they simply looked at each other, remembering their first encounter 5 years ago. Varthox spoke first. He thanked Kate for what she had done. She looked surprised and asked what he meant. The king explained that she had saved his empire. If the war had continued, if he had kept sending fleets to be destroyed, the Kelzari Empire would have collapsed. His people would have been conquered by others or torn apart by internal rebellions. By defeating his fleet so completely, by demonstrating such overwhelming superiority, Kate had forced him to face reality. She had made it impossible for him to continue fighting, and that had saved his empire. The Kelzari were now part of a peaceful galaxy, using their strengths for protection rather than conquest. They had purpose and respect. This was better than endless war. Kate listened to this and then replied. She said that she had not done it to save the Kelzari Empire. She had done it to protect humanity and establish peace, but she was glad that the outcome benefited everyone. War was wasteful. Peace, even imperfect peace, was better. Varthox asked her about the legend of Baba Yaga. He wanted to know if the stories were true. Was she really unstoppable? Had she really completed 47 impossible missions without failure? Kate smiled slightly and said that legends were always exaggerated. She had been lucky. She had good teammates. She had excellent training. But she was still just human with all the limitations that implied. The king disagreed. He said that what made Kate dangerous was not superhuman abilities. It was her mindset. She approached every situation with total focus and preparation. She left nothing to chance. She studied her opponents until she knew them better than they knew themselves, and she never hesitated when action was required. That combination was more dangerous than any physical advantage. Kate acknowledged that this was true. She said that humans had survived on Earth by being smart and adaptable. The same principles applied to everything else. Success came from preparation, knowledge, and the willingness to do whatever was necessary. Varthox then asked a question that had clearly been bothering him. He asked if Kate thought peace would last. Would the galaxy remain stable, or would someone eventually challenge the new order? Kate considered the question carefully before answering. She said that peace never lasted forever. Eventually, a new threat would emerge. Some ambitious leader would decide that they could succeed where the Kelzari failed. Some species would develop new weapons or technologies that they believed made them invincible. History always repeated itself, but, Kate continued, that was acceptable. The purpose of the current peace was not to last forever. It was to give species time to grow, develop, and build relationships. When the next crisis came, the galaxy would be stronger and more united. The alliances formed during peacetime would help species work together during war, and humanity would be ready. They were always preparing for the next threat, the next challenge. They studied potential enemies, developed new technologies, trained new operatives. When trouble came, humanity would respond with the same effectiveness they had shown against the Kelzari. Varthox nodded slowly. He understood. This was the human way, always preparing, always learning, never resting on past victories. It was exhausting just to think about, but also impressive. No wonder humans had survived on their death world. No wonder they had defeated the Kelzari so easily. The king stood to leave. Before he went, he told Kate that the Kelzari had a saying. The strongest warrior is not the one who never loses, but the one who learns from every loss. He said that humanity embodied this principle. They learned from everything, even victories. This made them truly dangerous. Kate watched him go, then returned to her work. She had a class to teach in an hour. Young operatives who wanted to learn the skills that had made her legendary. She would teach them everything she knew, and they would teach the next generation, and that generation would teach the one after. This was how humanity ensured its survival, not through overwhelming force, but through continuous improvement. Each generation learned from the previous one and added their own knowledge. Human capabilities grew steadily year after year, decade after decade. Somewhere in the galaxy, on a world humanity had not yet discovered, another potential threat was growing. Another species was developing weapons and dreaming of conquest. They did not know about humanity yet. They did not know about the Baba Yaga, but they would learn. Eventually they would encounter humanity and decide that these small, weak creatures could be easily dominated. They would make the same mistake the Kelzari made, and they would learn the same lesson. Humanity did not need to be the biggest, the strongest, or the most advanced. They just needed to be prepared. They needed to understand their enemies. They needed to use every advantage. And they needed to never give up, no matter how desperate the situation appeared. These principles had allowed humans to survive on Earth for millions of years. They had allowed humanity to reach the stars, and they would allow humanity to thrive in the galaxy, no matter what challenges came. Kate Morrison returned to her classroom and began teaching. Her students listened intently, knowing they were learning from a legend. They did not know that Kate did not see herself as special. She was simply a human who had learned the lessons that all humans learned. Prepare, adapt, persist, never surrender. These were not the principles of a warrior culture. They were the principles of a survivor culture. And in a galaxy full of predators, survivors were the most dangerous creatures of all. The legend of the Baba Yaga would continue. New stories would be